Assalamu alaikum. So today we are having our first lecture, and I will be teaching you physiology, which is a very interesting subject related to our body functions and their processes. So today we will start our first topic, that is peripheral nervous system. What is PNS? Peripheral nervous system. Basically, our nervous system is divided into the two parts: central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So, look, if we see here, we are dividing the whole nervous system into two parts: central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system majorly consists of brain and the spinal cord, but the peripheral nervous system consists of somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Generally, if we talk about the peripheral nervous system, so it is related to the nerves emerging from the brain and the spinal cord. Like we talk about the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So they are divided into two types of on the basis of function. We will say it is somatic and autonomic. The somatic is the one which uh, works under our will, but autonomic nervous system is the one which doesn't works under our will. Matlab, it is controlled automatically by our body. Then somatic is further divided into somatosensory and the somatomotor neurons, whereas the autonomic nervous system is divided into parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so what is peripheral nervous system? It is composed of nerves and ganglia. What are nerves? Nerve is the collection of axon outside the central nervous system, whereas ganglia is the scattered group of neuron cell bodies outside the central nervous system. मतलब सेंट्रल नर्वस सिस्टम के बाहर का क्या मतलब है कि ब्रेन और स्पाइनल कॉर्ड से आउटवर्ड्स इमर्जिंग न्यूरॉन्स जो चीज़ें हैं वो आउटसाइड कंसिडर हो रही हैं. It is not inside the brain or inside the spinal cord. Whereas it is the collection of, here nerves is the collection of axons, and it is the collection of neuron cell bodies. What is the difference between cell bodies and the axons? Axon is the structure which is emerging out of the cell body, like the long part which we are having. So if we differentiate between the cell body and axon, this the part is axon, this the part is cell body, and this is the axon. So collection of the axons outside is nerves, and the collection of cell body is ganglia. Now we will see how the nerves, how the nerves are protected. So nerve fibers or processes are wrapped in a protecting covering. Like here, if we see the picture, we will see that endoneurium is the first internal covering. Here it is indicating the endoneurium, in which there is only a one axon myelin sheet, and it is surrounded by a bundle of neuron fibers. What is endoneurium? Endoneurium is the sheet which is surrounding a single axon. Difference is that the endoneurium is surrounding, and each fiber is surrounded by a delicate connective tissue, that is endoneurium. But perineurium is surrounding a bundle of fibers, group of fibers surrounded by a coarser connective tissue. What is meant by coarser connective tissue? कि उसके जो साथी वाला, कोर्सर का मतलब होता है साथी, जो उसके साथ जुड़ी हुई चीज़ है. तो एंडोन्यूरियम के साथ जुड़ा हुआ जो साथी है, दैट इज पेरीन्यूरियम. So coarser connective tissue is the perineurium. Now this one part, perineurium, is surrounding the bundle of fibers. This part will be called as fascicle. And fascicle, the bundle of fascicle will be further covered by a outer tough connective tissue, that is epineurium. So here is the protection of neurons. as already we have discussed that the neurons are based on the your peripheral nervous system is based on the neurons, which are further divided into the two major types, cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Cranial nerves emerge from the cranium, means brain, and the spinal nerves emerge from the spinal cord. The number of cranial nerves is 12 pairs, means 24 in number, and spinal nerves are 31 pairs, means 62 in number. Now, cranial nerves are of three types, sensory, motor, and mixed. But the spinal nerves all are mixed, having the sensory and motor neurons in them. Now, we will further discuss what are the cranial nerves, we will discuss in detail. So, first of all, if we talk about all purely sensory neurons in the cranial nerves, we will discuss first of all optic nerve. Optic nerve, number of optic nerve is 2, cranial nerve 2, and optic nerve is arising from the retina of the eye. Each fiber is arising from the retina of the eye, where two optic fibers forms the optic chiasma by fiber crossing over each other, and their fibers follow the tract and continue to the cortex. So this is whole pathway which the optic fiber is following. And what is the function of optic fiber? It controls the vision, it converts light into chemical energy where it reaches the visual cortex, and it controls the amount of light, which is the function of iris. ठीक हो गया. Next thing is vestibulocochlear nerve. Vestibulocochlear nerve is the cranial nerve 8. Now, what is the function? Fibers run for equilibrium and hearing from inner ear to brain stem, and vestibular part will be responsible for balance, and cochlear part will transmit nerves for hearing. Next will be olfactory nerve. Olfactory nerve is the cranial nerve 1, and olfactory nerves in the nasal mucosa send impulses to the olfactory bulb, then it passes to cortex in the brain cerebrum. Now, what is its responsible? It is responsible for the sense of smell. Okay, now we will talk about the motor cranial nerves. What are motor cranial nerves? So there it includes oculomotor cranial nerve 3, trochlear cranial nerve 4, abducens cranial nerve 6, and accessory cranial nerve 11. So in this, oculomotor, trochlear, and the abducens are related to the eye functions, yeah, eye movements. Everything related to eye is of these three cranial nerves, but accessory is related to other muscles like back and neck muscles. So oculomotor fiber run from midbrain to the eye, and it supplies the motor fibers out 4 out of 6 muscles. Means there are total 6 muscles, but it supplies the fiber to 4 muscles: superior, inferior, medial rectus, and inferior oblique muscles. What is the function? To direct the eyeball movement, internal eye muscles, control lens shape and pupil size. सही है. Pupillary reflex, corneal reflex इसमें help करता है oculomotor. Trochlear nerve का क्या काम है? Trochlear nerve is supplying the motor fibers for one external eye muscle, and it also run from midbrain to the eye. Abducens leave the pons and run into the eye, and it supplies motor fibers to lateral rectus muscle, which rolls the eye laterally. It is related to the rolling of eye movement. And accessory fibers run from the superior spinal cord, that is C1 to C5, which we called as cranial vertebrae, and travel to muscles of back and neck. And what is its function? It activates the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles. These are the muscles related to the back and neck. ठीक हो गया. Okay, now we will discuss the mixed cranial nerves. Mixed means that it will be controlling the sensory and motor functions both. So here we will having first of all related to face. The nerves are trigeminal and the facial nerves. Trigeminal fiber will leave the pons and enter the face, and both are having the same location, facial and trigeminal. What is the difference? Difference is here that trigeminal in sensory case is controlling the facial expressions, lacrimal gland, and the salivary gland, whereas motor function will be controlling the chewing movement. And facial, in case of facial, what will be the sensory? Taste buds. And motor, skin of face and mucosa of the nose. So here is the difference between both facial nerves. They are having the difference in sensory and motor functions. Now next of all we will discuss what the important major important mixed nerve, that is vagus nerve. This is the longest nerve that is emerging from the hips of your hip, then reaching the knee and dividing into the tibula and the fibular muscles. So this is the longest nerve in your body. What is the origin? It is arising from medulla to thorax and then to abdominal cavity. Medulla से thorax नीचे की तरफ आ रहा है descending order में, then abdominal cavity पे reach कर रहा है. और function क्या है sensory में? Ear, skin, pharynx, larynx, thorax, epiglottis, visual tissues, taste, all are the sensory. But motor is the swallowing, speech, coughing, and autonomic nervous system. These all are the motor functions. They have this is only a one single nerve that is having a lot of functions, sensory and motor both. Now glossopharyngeal is the nerve number 9, and it is the fiber run from medulla and enter into the throat. It is controlling the throat basically. So what is our having the functions? Sensory function is taste receptor and pressure receptor, and whereas the motor is saliva production and the promote pharynx for swallowing, whereas throat, जो throat के काम है वही करेगा, saliva production, promote pharynx for swallowing. Now next one is hypoglossal. Hypoglossal is the cranial nerve 12, where runs from medulla and enter into the tongue. Now sensory will carry impulses from tongue and motor will be controlling the tongue movements. So in this figure we are having the whole sum of the nerves which we have discussed right now. These all are the cranial nerves controlling the different functions, having the sensory, motor, purely sensory and purely motor nerves. Here first of all we are having the cranial, olfactory nerve 1, optic nerve 2, oculomotor, trochlear, abducens are the pure motor nerves which are controlling the eye movements. Trigeminal and the facial are having the this one pathway. Then we are having vestibulocochlear, which is having the hearing and balance. Vagus nerves, glossopharyngeal, accessory, and hypoglossal. So all are indicating the different parts that are controlled by them. Okay, now we will discuss the next part, that is the spinal nerves and the nerve plexus. What is spinal nerves? We are already been discussed that nerves arising from the spinal cord are spinal nerves. There are 31 in pairs and they are formed. Okay, now this part is important, very important, that how the spinal nerves are formed. They are formed by the two major parts of the spinal cord, that is ventral root and the dorsal root. We are having the figure of the spinal cord. Okay, so upper part will be the ventral root and the lower part will be the dorsal root of the spinal cord. This is whole spinal cord butterfly shape structure. Now we will having these two roots will come forward and join at a point, and then it will be having the branches which will be moving into the different parts of body. So yeah, so the spinal nerves is having basically three parts. First of all, it is having roots, then it is having trunk, then it is having branches. Similarly, this structure is very, very similar to the one which is having the tree. Okay, if we compare this structure with the tree, then we are having this. These are roots which we will consider the dorsal and the ventral root of the spinal cord. Now there will be a trunk where some nerves are moving in line like that, which is this trunk. Now further trunk is dividing into rami, which are the shorter spinal nerves, increasing the length of the spinal nerves a half inch length of the spinal nerves, which will be considered as the branches of the tree. So in this way we will help, it is helpful to understand the structure of the spinal nerve. So I have written that million of neurons bringing sensory information to the spinal cord and millions of motor neuron coursing from spinal cord to the muscles and gland. स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में बहुत सारी सेंसरी इंफॉर्मेशन भी आ रही है और बहुत सारी मोटर जा भी रही है, तो दो बातें होगी. अब नाउ वी विल बी हैविंग द डोर्सल में कौन सी आ रही है एफरेंट, वेंट्रल में आ रही है इफरेंट. ठीक है. इस डेव निमोनिक से हम याद रख लेंगे कि डेव क्या चीज़ है, डोर्सल फॉर एफरेंट, वेंट्रल फॉर इफरेंट. ठीक हो गया. और ये कहाँ कहाँ लेके जा रही हैं, एफरेंट मतलब आ रही है, कहाँ से आ रही है, स्किन मसल ऑफ पोस्टीरियर बॉडी ट्रंक से आ रही है. इफरेंट जा कर रही है इंटरकोस्टल मसल, रिब मसल ऑफ एंटीरियर लेटरल ट्रंक. तो ये दो बातें होगी, कहाँ से आ रही है, स्किन मसल्स ऑफ पोस्टीरियर बॉडी ट्रंक, लेटरल बॉडी ट्रंक में कहाँ से जा रही है, और इंटरकोस्टल मसल्स एंड रिब्स. Now what will be happening if there will be a damage to the spinal nerve? What will happen? The loss of sensation, उस बॉडी पार्ट की सेंसेशन ख़त्म हो जाएगी, और फ्लैसिड पैरालिसिस, वो बॉडी पार्ट काम करना ही छोड़ देगा, पैरालिसिस हो जाएगा, जैसे हम कहते हैं कि फालिज का अटैक होना. तो उसमें क्या होता है, डैमेज टू स्पाइनल नर्व इज कॉज्ड. Okay, here we are seeing the spinal nerves. We will not go in detail like this cranial nerves, but we will discuss overview. What is the spinal nerve? So, spinal nerve is divided into several parts: cervical nerves, thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, and the sacral nerves. What are the cervical nerves? They are ranging from the C1 to the C8, where we are having the ventral rami from cervical plexus. Basically, it is from C1 to C5. Now, thoracic nerves are ranging from C5 to C8 and T1. Sorry. I'm wrong here. Thoracic is ranging from T1 to T12. C1 to C8 is the cervical. Lumbar nerves are ranging from L1 to L5, and sacral are ranging from S1 to S4. But what is the plexus? This is the plexus formation, which is ranging from cervical plexuses C1 to C5, whereas the brachial is C5 to C8 and T1. No plexus are formed in the thoracic or intercostal nerves, but the lumbar plexus is L1 to L4, and whereas the rami of sacral plexus is L4 to 5 and S1 to S4. So this is the figure of spinal nerves. We will not go in detail to these nerves, okay, but we must know what is the divisions of the spinal nerves. So this was our first topic, that is the peripheral nervous system. In case of peripheral nervous system, we were discussing the two types of nerves, cranial and the spinal nerves, in detail. Now this figure is showing the somatic motor reflex and autonomic motor reflex. Now in the second lecture we will discussing the somatic and autonomic differences and what are they called.